on a fee, tapped a woman in my dress. Her. The third anniversary gala at the plaza looked exactly like the kind of life people assumed I had dreamed about. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, champagne that cost more per bottle than my first month's rent after graduate school. A string quartet played near the windows while 200 people from New York's finance and technology circles smiled for photographs beneath a wall of orchids. At the center of the room stood my twin sister, Chloe. She wore my mother's diamond earrings, the ones I had been promised when I was 17. She wore a pale silver gown that had been fitted to her body by a designer I used to know, and she had her hand resting on the arm of the man who had once asked me to marry him, Julian Mercer. 3 years earlier, he had kissed my forehead the night before our wedding and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'd get to call you my wife." He had no idea he had spent the next 3 years married to the wrong woman. Chloe lifted her champagne glass. "To my amazing husband," she said into the microphone. Her voice was softer than mine. Always had been. Our mother used to call it feminine. Mine was too direct, too sharp, too much. Too much. Chloe smiled at Julian. We built such a beautiful life together. People applauded. We potted. I stood behind the closed ballroom doors, listening. My right hand ached. It always did in cold rooms. 2 fingers had been rebuilt 3 years earlier by a surgeon in Rotterdam, and even after months of therapy, certain movements still sent a small electric pain into my wrist. I flexed them once. Arthur Bellamy, my mentor and the managing partner of Bellamy Klein International, stood beside me. "You can still walk away," he said quietly. I looked at him. "No." He nodded. He didn't ask again. Behind us, 2 members of our forensic team held sealed evidence cases. One contained certified medical records. Another contained bank records, wire transfer reports, access logs, corporate authorizations, and 38 pages of transactions that had taken my team 9 weeks to reconstruct. A third envelope held something much simpler, DNA. Arthur glanced at the ballroom doors. "You don't have to enjoy this." "I don't." "Good," I breathed in. "Open them." The doors swung apart. The quartet stopped halfway through a note. It wasn't dramatic because anyone planned it. The violinist just saw my face. Then he saw Chloe's. His bow froze. The murmur moved through the ballroom. Julian turned. His champagne flute slipped from his hand and shattered against the marble floor. Chloe's face emptied. For 1 second, she wasn't the polished billionaire's wife. She was 8 years old again, standing in our parents' kitchen after breaking a vase and watching me get blamed. Then the mask came back. "Who is that?" her voice cracked. I started walking. People shifted away from the center aisle. A few raised their phones. Julian didn't move. His mouth opened once, closed, then opened again. "Sienna?" Chloe grabbed his arm. "Julian, don't." He looked at her, then at me, back at her. 2 identical faces, 1 room, 3 years of lies collapsing in less than 10 seconds. I reached the table and placed a thick black audit binder in front of him. "Happy anniversary." My voice was calm. That surprised me. I'd imagined this moment while learning to bend my damaged fingers again. I'd imagined screaming. I'd imagined crying. Instead, I felt almost quiet. Julian stared at me. "You're alive?" Chloe stepped forward. "Security." Nobody moved. The head of hotel security had already been briefed by the company's general counsel. This was not a random intrusion. I was the lead executive auditor on a mandatory international compliance review of Mercer's pending merger. I had every legal right to be in the building. Chloe pointed at me. "She's some kind of stalker. Look at her. She had surgery to look like me." I laughed once. That sound made her flinch. "You really want to start with surgery?" Her hand went to her left cheek. There it was. That tiny mole. Mine had been there since childhood. Hers hadn't. Julian noticed the gesture. I opened the binder. Page 1 was a photograph from a private cosmetic clinic outside Prague. Chloe, 3 years younger, face swollen from a minor procedure. A black marker circle around her left cheek. Page 2 was the payment authorization, paid by my father. To page 3 was the clinic's treatment notes. Pigmentation implant and tissue alteration to create a permanent identifying mark. Julia looked at Chloe. She shook her head. "No, that's fake." I turned another page. "Then you'll love the next section. $30 million. That was how much she had taken. Not from Julian personally, from Mercer Dynamics. Corporate cash moved through consulting contracts, shell vendors, emergency loans, and fake licensing agreements. The money ended up in accounts tied to my parents. Julian flipped through the first few pages. His face changed. "Where did you get this?" "Your board hired my firm to find it." He stared at the Bellamy Klein logo and the cover, then at me. For the first time I saw the answer from behind his eyes. The audit team. The anonymous lead partner who refused video meetings. The consultant who insisted all communications go through secure channels. The person his CFO had complained was merciless. Me. Chloe moved toward the binder. "Did you read that?" Julian pulled it away. "What is this?" Nothing. $30 million is not nothing. Julian, she's doing this because she's obsessed with us." I looked at him. "There's one more thing." He didn't want to hear it, I could tell, but I handed him the envelope anyway. Inside were 2 DNA reports. One established that Chloe and I were identical twins. The second compared biological material preserved from an old private fertility examination Julian and I had completed 6 months before our wedding with a recent sample collected during a legally authorized corporate insurance medical review. The woman living as Sienna Mercer was genetically my twin, but a series of non-genetic identifiers did not match: old fracture history, dental work, a childhood surgical scar, and fingerprints. Identical twins do not have identical fingerprints. Julian sat down. He looked physically ill. "Sienna!" Chloe screamed. "Stop calling her that!" The room went silent. I looked at my sister. Her chest was rising too fast. "Tell him," I said. "Tell him what? Why? Tell him what I said. Tell him what? Tell him where I was while you were walking down the aisle." She stared at me. My parents were standing 15 feet away. My mother had one hand pressed against her mouth. My father looked toward the nearest exit. 3 years earlier, I had watched those same 2 people lock a steel basement door. I had begged them not to leave. But my mother had leaned toward an air vent and whispered, "Chloe is sweeter than you. Julian deserves a soft wife." That was the last full sentence she said to me before they drove away to my wedding. The morning had started with chamomile tea. So my mother brought it upstairs while I was sitting in front of a mirror in a silk robe. For once she was being kind. That should have scared me. Instead, I wanted to believe. That's the humiliating part. At 29 years old, with a career, a graduate degree, and more financial responsibility than either of my parents had ever held, I still wanted my mother to be proud of me. She set the cup beside my hand. "Nervous? A little," she smiled. "Drink." I took a sip. She adjusted my veil. "You look beautiful." I nearly cried. Those 3 words meant more to me than they should have. I met Julian during a logistics acquisition. He was the CEO on the other side of the table. He argued with me for 40 minutes over a valuation model. Then, after the meeting, he asked if I'd like coffee. "Are you asking me on a date after telling me my forecast assumptions were aggressive?" He smiled. "I'm asking because you were the only person in that room who made me reconsider mine. My parents suddenly loved my career. Not because they understood me. Because Julian was worth several $billion. Chloe became sweeter than usual, too. She helped with wedding fittings. Asked about Julian's habits, his passwords, his favorite foods, how he handled finances. I thought she was trying to be part of my life. I didn't know she was studying it. 10 minutes after I finished the tea, the room started moving. Not spinning, sliding. I stood. My knees buckled. My mother caught me. "Mom, it's okay." "What?" My mother caught me. "Mom, it's okay." "What?" My tongue felt heavy, so he laid me on the carpet. The last thing I saw before everything went black was Chloe entering the room in a white robe. My robe. When I woke, my wrists burned. The floor was concrete. It smelled like damp stone, rust, and old paint. For several seconds, I didn't know where I was. Then I tried to move. Metal snapped tight around one wrist. I screamed. The sound came back from the walls. My left hand was cuffed to a thick pipe running along the basement wall. There was an empty water bottle beside me, a stained mattress. No phone, no shoes. I was still wearing part of my bridal undergarments under a sweater someone had pulled over me. "Mom?" "Nothing." "Dad?" I screamed until my throat hurt. Eventually, footsteps moved above me. A lock turned, not the basement door, a smaller door on the other side of the wall. My mother spoke through an air vent. "Sienna." I crawled toward it. "What are you doing? You need to calm down. Let him out. Let him out. Don't shout." I hit the metal vent with my free hand. "My wedding, Julian Chloe, will handle it." I stopped. "What?" My father spoke next. You've always been difficult. I couldn't understand the sentence, not because I hadn't heard it, because it had nothing to do with what was happening. What are you talking about? Julian needs stability. Then let me out. Out? My mother sighed. The sound was almost irritated. Your sister has always wanted a family, a real life. You have your work. I stared at the vent. You're insane. Don't speak to your mother like that, my father snapped. I laughed. It came out broken. You drugged me. Nobody answered. You drugged me. My mother lowered her voice. Chloe looks exactly like you. No, she doesn't. Close enough. I thought about the mole, the scar, the small differences nobody noticed unless they knew us. Then I remembered Chloe wearing a bandage on her cheek 2 months earlier. She told me she'd had a cyst removed. My stomach turned. No, my mother continued. After the wedding, she'll say the stress changed her. People accept things when they're given a simple explanation. What about Julian? He'll adjust. He'll know. My father laughed quietly. Men see what they want to see. I pulled against the cuff until metal cut my skin. Please. That word. I hate that word because of that basement. Please. Please don't do this. Please tell Julian. Please let me go. Please. My mother said, Chloe is sweeter and prettier than you. I closed my eyes. Same face. Same TNA. Still, how prettier. Julian deserves someone soft. Not a woman who treats marriage like another board meeting. You don't even know him. We know enough. Why? Silence. I pressed my forehead against the wall. Why are you doing this? My father's answer came after several seconds. Because you've never understood what family requires. That wasn't the truth. I wouldn't learn the truth for 3 more years, but it was enough to tell me they weren't coming back. Through the small reinforced basement window, I saw the driveway. A limousine pulled up. My heart stopped. Then Chloe appeared, in my dress, my custom wedding dress. She had my veil, my bouquet, even the earrings Julian had given me. I slammed my fist against the glass. Chloe, she turned. For 1 second our eyes met. She knew where I was. She knew. I hit the glass until my knuckles opened. Please. Chloe looked away. My mother came behind her and fixed the veil. Father opened the limousine door. They drove away. The basement became quiet. I don't know how long I cried. Hours. Maybe less. Grief destroys time. Eventually, the house settled. No voices, no voices, no footsteps. Nothing. I tested the pipe. Solid. The cuff. Heavy. The door. Too far away. The window. Reinforced and narrow. I yelled until my voice disappeared. Nobody came. There was 1 bottle of water, no food, no blanket. My parents hadn't knocked me down there to scare me. They had left me to disappear. That realization changed the room. I stopped thinking like a daughter. I started thinking like an analyst. Inventory. 1 pipe, 1 cuff, 1 water bottle, 1 mattress, 2 metal mattress springs exposed through torn fabric, 1 broken wooden support beneath the bed, a drain, a high window, my body, my hands, my mind. I had spent my career solving problems that other people called impossible because the cost of failure was financial. This time the cost was me. I spent hours testing everything. The pipe wouldn't move. The cuff's lock was beyond anything I could manipulate with a broken spring. The wooden support couldn't reach the window. By night, my wrist was swollen. I drank half the water. The temperature fell. I started shivering. At some point I looked at my hand. The cuff was tight around the wrist. My fingers were the widest part below it. I don't want to describe what I did in detail. I don't romanticize it. It was not brave. It was terrifying. I cried before I made the decision. I vomited afterward. I damaged 2 fingers badly enough that surgeons later had to reconstruct them. But sometime before dawn, after pain blurred the edges of the room, I got my hand through the cuff. I lay on the floor shaking. Free, not safe. Free, there is a difference. I wrapped my hand in a strip torn from the mattress, used the metal spring to work at the basement window latch. It took almost an hour. Rain blew in when the window finally shifted. Cold, black sky, mud. I pushed through head first. My injured hand struck the frame and I nearly blacked out. Then I fell into wet grass. For several seconds I just lay there. Rain hit my face. I started laughing, not because anything was funny, because the sky was above me. I was outside. I ran, barefoot, half-dressed, one hand wrapped in filthy cloth. I didn't run toward the road. My father knew people. My parents would realize eventually I needed distance before anyone knew I was alive. There was an industrial freight depot less than a mile away. I'd seen it from the car when my parents first bought the abandoned property. I reached it just before sunrise. A driver found me crouched behind a trailer. He spoke little English. I spoke almost none of his Polish. He saw the blood, called an ambulance. I panicked. No police. He frowned. I repeated it. No police, please. Maybe he thought I was undocumented. Maybe he thought I was running from an abusive husband. He made a phone call. 2 hours later, I was in the passenger seat of a freight truck headed toward a port facility. The driver gave me a coat. His name was Merrick. I never learned his last name. He saved my life. By the time my family returned to the basement, I was gone. By the time they started searching quietly, I was already moving under a borrowed name. By the time Chloe slept beside Julian as his wife for the first time, I was in a hospital outside Rotterdam telling a surgeon that my name was Anna Vale. The bride my family tried to kill had vanished. And for the next 3 years, I let them believe she stayed gone. Chapter 2. The auditor recovery was ugly. Not cinematic, not inspiring. Ugly. My hand required 2 surgeries. I had no insurance, no passport in my possession, no access to my bank accounts because every account I owned had been connected to devices my family could trace. I knew exactly how much money I had. 0. Marek's cousin knew a nurse. The nurse knew a legal aid worker. The legal aid worker knew Arthur Bellamy. That was how my new life started. Arthur was 62, British, and had the emotional warmth of an expensive refrigerator. The first time he met me, he sat across from my hospital bed and said, "I've been told you're very good with numbers." I stared at him. "My fingers are broken." "I can see that. I'm not looking for a job. Good. I'm not offering one." He placed a folder on my tray. Inside were financial statements from a failing shipping company. "What is this? A problem? I don't care." "Then don't solve it." He stood and walked toward the door. I hated him immediately. I looked at the statements. 5 minutes later, I called him back. "The company isn't failing." Arthur turned. "The freight subsidiary is hiding profits through depreciation schedules." He raised an eyebrow. "Go on." I did, for 20 minutes. When I finished, he sat down again. "Who are you?" My mum has told him. Then I remembered my mother through the air vent. I remembered Chloe in my dress. Nobody. Arthur studied me. "No, nobody doesn't read a balance sheet like that." I looked away. He didn't press. For 6 months, he paid my medical costs through a foundation and called it a loan. When I asked for repayment terms, he said, "Survive first, become annoying later." I became very annoying. Once I could type properly, I worked. Remote research, forensic accounting, risk reviews, anything Bellamy Klein needed that could be done quietly. Arthur eventually learned my real identity. Not because I told him, because he investigated me. I was furious. "You had no right." I agree. "Then why?" "Because someone tried to erase you." He sat behind his desk. I needed to know whether they were still looking. My anger drained. "Were they?" "No." That hurt more than I expected. Arthur saw it. "They filed no missing person report." I nodded. "Of course they hadn't." "You were declared missing privately by a few people from your old professional circle. Your husband." I looked up. Arthur stopped. "What?" "He hired investigators for approximately 4 months. My chest tightened. 4? "Yes. Then they closed the search." "Why?" Arthur was quiet. "Your family produced messages suggesting you had become unstable before the wedding and fled." I laughed once. "They forged them." "Likely, and Julian believed them." Arthur didn't answer. That was answer enough. Years later, Julian would tell me Chloe said the kidnapping trauma had changed her memory. My parents supported the lie. They said I had experienced dissociative episodes since adolescence. Chloe cried. She told Julian she was terrified he would leave because she couldn't remember pieces of their relationship, and because he loved me, or thought he did, he chose compassion over suspicion. I worked. That became my religion. At Bellamy Klein, nobody cared whether I was sweeter than Chloe. They cared whether I was right. I was, often. By the second year, I led a forensic team. By the third, I was reviewing merger risk across 3 continents. I stopped using Anna Vale. Not because I was ready to become Sienna again, I wasn't. But Arthur told me, you can't build freedom around a false name forever. So I legally established a professional identity using my middle name, Sienna Vale, close enough to truth that I could breathe. Far enough from Mercer that nobody immediately connected me. My hand healed. Mostly, my parents never contacted me. Chloe continued living publicly as Sienna Mercer. I saw photographs whether I wanted to or not. Charity galas, vacation homes, magazine profiles. One headline called her the Quiet Genius Besid Julian Mercer. I nearly threw my laptop across the room. Quiet genius. Chloe couldn't calculate compound interest without an app. But she had something I didn't understand yet. Access. 3 years after the wedding, Arthur entered my office, carrying a merger file. He dropped it on my desk. Potential conflict. I looked at the cover. Merger Dynamics HAL, Dwanan Global. My body reacted before my mind did. My right hand cramped. Arthur sat down. We can assign someone else. I stared at Julian's photograph. Beside him stood Chloe. My face. My life. Why us? Halcyon's lenders demanded an independent review. Mercer has expanded too quickly. There are concerns about cash leakage. I looked at him. What kind? Enough that the board agreed to full forensic access. Something inside me became very still. Who knows who I am? At Bellamy, yes. 3 partners. Legal counsel. At Mercer, no one. I opened the file. Assign it to me. Arthur exhaled. I thought you'd say that. You disagree? I think revenge makes people stupid. This isn't revenge. What is it? I looked at the merger agreement. An audit. Arthur almost smiled. That answer worries me more. I became lead auditor under my professional name. No video calls. No in-person meetings until final review. Perfectly normal for an international team handling sensitive pre-merger data. Mercer's CFO complained once. I sent back a 3-page request list. He stopped complaining. We received authorized access to the company's financial systems, vendor contracts, board minutes, internal approvals, treasury records, and compliance logs. Within 2 days, I found the first discrepancy. A consulting company in Malta, no staff, no real office, paid $4.2 million over 18 months. The approving executive, S. Mercer. My stolen name. I followed the trail. Another vendor, then another. A licensing company in Cyprus, a family trust in Luxembourg, a private lender in the Caribbean. The pattern was sloppy, not because Chloe was careless, because she didn't know what did fraud look like. She hid transactions the way a child hides candy wrappers beneath a bed. Different names, same timing, same authorization device, same destination relationships. I built a map. By week 3, the number was 11 million. By week 5, 22. By week 7, $30 million. Arthur stood behind me looking at the screen. Jesus. It went to them. Your parents? I nodded. Accounts tied to their property company, personal debt vehicles, and a holding structure registered through a law firm in Belize. Arthur studied me. You okay? No. Good answer. I zoomed in on the transaction history. Something bothered me. The money was moving out almost immediately after reaching my parents. Where is it going? Our team traced the next layer. Cash businesses, private security firms, a nightclub group. Then one name appeared in an old law enforcement compliance database, a company associated with organized crime financing. I leaned back. Arthur swore under his breath. This is bigger. I looked at the pattern again. My parents hadn't been spending all 30 million. They'd been paying someone. The hidden truth had finally started showing itself. 3 years earlier, they hadn't replaced me simply because Chloe wanted Julian. They needed access to Julian's money, and they knew I would never give it to them. That was why the swap had to be total. They didn't just want my husband. They wanted my authority. My name, my position inside a billionaire's company. Chloe had been installed like a stolen password. We found old debt records, private promissory notes, a luxury property refinance, loans my parents had taken from entities tied to dangerous lenders. Millions. They had spent for years pretending to be wealthier than they were. Homes, cars, clubs, vacations. Chloe's lifestyle. When the debts came due, legal banks would not touch them. The lenders did. Then the lenders wanted their money, and my parents looked at me, their financially disciplined daughter engaged to a billionaire. I would have said no. Chloe said yes. I sat alone in the audit room long after midnight. For the first time, the basement made complete sense. But my mother hadn't chosen Chloe because she was sweeter. She had chosen the daughter easier to control. The favoritism had always had economics underneath it. Chloe cost them money. I made them money. And when my independence threatened that system, they removed me. I thought I would feel vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. Arthur entered carrying coffee. He placed one beside me. No chamomile. I looked at him. He knew. I smiled despite myself. Thank you. The audit gave us financial proof, but not identity proof. For that, I went backward. Chloe's mole. The clinic. 2 months before the wedding, Chloe had supposedly traveled to Croatia with friends. Her passport records show Prague. Arthur's investigators found a private cosmetic clinic that had closed after a tax case. Its records were held by a court-appointed administrator. We obtained them legally through counsel. When the certified file arrived, I couldn't open it. Arthur did. There she was, my sister, treatment date, photographs, payment receipt. My sister, treatment date, photographs, payment receipt. My father's card, procedure notes. The purpose wasn't written as identity theft, of course not, but the location, size, and color of the artificial mark matched mine. Arthur looked at me. That's enough for conspiracy counsel to become very interested. Not yet. What else? The basement. Police had never searched it. Nobody knew a crime had happened there. The abandoned property was still owned by one of my father's companies. We worked through attorneys and investigators, then contacted law enforcement with the evidence we already had. A warrant followed. 3 years after I escaped, officers entered the basement. They found the pipe, the cuff, old blood staining in cracks near the wall, fibers from the bridal clothing I had been wearing, the broken window latch. Forensic imaging of my repaired hand showed old trauma consistent with the injuries from that night. I sat in Arthur's office when investigators called. The handcuff was still there, the rusting around the pipe. My stomach turned. I ended the call and went to the bathroom. I was sick. When I came back, Arthur didn't mention it. He handed me water. I looked at the glass. For a second, I was 29 again, watching a limousine leave. I thought finding it would make me feel stronger. Arthur shook his head. Evidence isn't therapy. I stared at my repaired fingers. No, but it is evidence. That mattered. The final piece was Julian. He had started noticing the audit pressure. His board minutes became increasingly tense. One meeting transcript made me stop. Julian said, "My wife used to understand this company better than half the executives in this room." An independent director asked, "Used to," a long pause in the transcript. Then, Julian, she changed after the wedding. I read the line 5 times. The director asked whether he meant medically. Julian said, "I don't know." His own doubt finally reached the surface. Chloe had spent 3 years hiding behind trauma, avoiding business conversations, delegating anything technical, pretending migraines, calling my old interests part of the person I was before. Julian had accepted it because rejecting it felt cruel. Then the money disappeared, and suddenly the personality change had a price tag. He hired a private lawyer without telling Chloe. We saw the legal retainer in the company disclosures. I told Arthur, "He's looking." Arthur nodded. "Do you want him to find you?" "No." "Why?" "Because I want him to see the evidence before he sees me." The night of the gala, I dressed in black, no gown, no diamonds, no attempt to reclaim the bride they had stolen. That woman was gone. I packed the audit binder, the clinic records, the transfer maps, the basement warrant photos, the forensic hand report, DNA documentation, everything. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face as Chloe. Different eyes. People say identical twins are impossible to tell apart. They're wrong. The face is not a person. A person is what accumulates behind it. Choices, memory, work, pain, the things you refuse to become. Arthur waited downstairs beside a black SUV. He opened the door. "You ready?" I looked at the evidence case in my hand. No. Then I got in anyway. Chapter 3. 2 faces. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Julian was still holding the DNA report. Chloe's breathing filled the microphone she dropped onto the table. My mother stepped forward first. "Sienna." I looked at her. She stopped. That was new. But my mother had never stopped when I looked at her before. She had always assumed the room belonged to her. "Which one?" I asked. Her face tightened. "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Humiliate your sister." For a second I couldn't speak, not because I was angry, because the sentence was so perfectly her. 3 years, kidnapping, abasement, $30 million. And somehow the emergency was still Chloe's embarrassment. I laughed. My father whispered, "Keep your voice down." The microphone on the table carried it across the ballroom. People turned toward him. I looked at Arthur. He gave the smallest nod. Our legal team was ready. Julian stood. His hands were shaking. "Is this true?" Chloe grabbed him. "No." He pulled away. She froze. Julian had probably never physically rejected her before. "Is any of this true? She's manipulating you." "The transfers! I can explain. The claiming mum made me." My mother gasped. There it was, the first crack. Chloe realized what she'd said. She covered her mouth. Julian stared. "Made you do what? Nothing? You just said I was scared." Chloe's eyes filled. The same tears that had protected her since childhood. Our father stepped in. "This should be discussed privately." I looked at him. "No. Sienna, you left me chained to a pipe." A sound moved through the room. Not quite a gasp. Something lower. My mother whispered, "That isn't what happened." I opened the evidence case. The first photograph showed the basement. The second showed the cuff around the pipe. The third showed the broken window. Then the medical imaging of my hand. I placed them on the table. Julian stared at the x-ray. I held up my right hand. "You asked me once why I stopped wearing the ring you gave me." His face crumpled. Chloe had told him swelling from stress made jewelry painful. "I wasn't there to wear it." He sat down again. My mother said, "We never meant for you to die." I turned slowly. The room heard her. Every camera heard her. She realized it too late. My father closed his eyes. Chloe whispered, "Mom." My mother panicked. "We were coming back. When? You escaped before. When?" She couldn't answer. I remembered the empty water bottle. The cold. She couldn't answer. I remembered the empty water bottle. The silence after their car left. One day, nothing. Two, nothing. A week. My father snapped. We were under pressure. Finally, truth. I looked at him. From whom? He saw the trap. His mouth closed. But we already knew. The financing map was in Julian's binder. Money from Mercer Dynamics, to Chloe-controlled vendors, to my parents. Then outward to businesses connected with organized crime lenders. Julian flipped to that section. His face became grey. "What did you do?" My father stared at Chloe. She stared at him. The family alliance was disintegrating in real time. My mother began crying. "We owed money." "How much?" Julian asked. "That doesn't matter." Hurt? Her people near the back moved away from the tables. Julian never shouted in public. I had known him for years before the wedding. He controlled his voice when angry. That was one of the things I loved about him. Now he looked at my parents like strangers. My father said, "Several million." Arthur spoke for the first time. Initial principal was approximately 8.4. Every head turned. He continued calmly. "Interest and penalties increase the obligation. Our current estimate is 14 to 16 million before Chloe began diverting corporate funds." Julian looked at Chloe. "You stole 30. I was helping my family. You stole $30 million. They were going to hurt them, and you used my company. Our company." "No!" Julian's voice dropped. "Not yours." Chloe recoiled. That single sentence stripped away 3 years. My mother moved beside her. "Julian, she did what any daughter would do." I stared at her. "No, not any daughter. The daughter they trained to believe love meant financing their consequences. For years I had done a cleaner version of the same thing. Paid bills, fixed mistakes, absorbed debt. Chloe simply took it further because stealing was easier than hearing no." Julian looked at me. "Did you know?" "Not until the audit." "How much of my company did she have access to?" "Too much." He closed his eyes. I continued. "She used permissions tied to my identity. Your internal controls assumed the person authorized as Sienna Mercer was me. Because I told him she was." His voice broke. "I didn't rescue him from that realization. He needed to sit in it." Chloe pointed at me. "You think you're better than me because you can read spreadsheets?" "No." "You always did." "No, Chloe. You treated me like I was stupid. I covered your rent at 24. You made me feel like a charity case. I paid your credit cards. Because you wanted control." I stared at her. There was no point arguing childhood anymore. She had built an entire moral system where receiving help proved oppression. I lowered my voice. You wore my wedding dress. Her face changed. You slept beside a man who believed you were me. Julian flinched. You signed my name. She looked away. You moved money under my name. Nothing. You watched me through a basement window and got into a limousine. Her eyes filled. I didn't know they were going to leave you. I felt the room disappear. For 3 years, I'd imagined what I would say if Chloe apologized. This wasn't an apology. Still, it was the first thing that sounded remotely human. Did you know I was drunk? She nodded once. Barely. Did you know I was locked up? Another nod. Did you know you were taking my place? She started to cry. Yes. Julian stood so quickly, his chair fell backward. He walked away from her, not toward me, away. Like physical distance was suddenly necessary, he pressed both hands to his face. Oh my God. Chloe followed. Julian, don't touch me. She stopped. He looked at her. The horror in his expression changed the temperature in the room. For 3 years, his voice failed. He tried again. For 3 years you let me believe. Chloe sobbed. I loved you. No. I did. No. He shook his head. You loved my house, my name, my company. That's not fair. He laughed. A terrible sound. Fair. He pointed toward me. She was chained in a basement while I was saying vows to you. Chloe shouted. You didn't notice? The room froze, she realized immediately. But she couldn't take it back. Julian stared. Chloe wiped her face. If you loved her so much, why didn't you notice? That question was cruel. It was also the question I had carried for 3 years. Julian looked at me. I didn't look away. He had no answer. Neither did I. My father moved toward the exit. 2 investigators and hotel security blocked his path. He stopped. What is this? Arthur replied. Law enforcement asked that all principals remain available. My mother went pale. Police, among others. Chloe grabbed her bag. I said, You can't tell me what to do. No, but federal investigators can tell you not to destroy potential evidence. Her hand froze over the bag. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Not cinematic chaos. Legal chaos. Phones. Attorneys. Security moving guests back. Board members demanding private rooms. Law enforcement officers entering discreetly from a service corridor. Nobody slammed Chloe onto a table. Nobody needed to. Evidence is quieter than revenge fantasies and much harder to escape. My parents were separated for interviews. Chloe was advised of her rights and eventually taken out through a side exit. Cameras still caught her. She hid her face with the same hand that wore my mother's diamonds. The jewelry was later seized under a preservation order because investigators suspected corporate funds had purchased some of it. Hendy. Julian remained in the ballroom after nearly everyone else left. Whilst crunched beneath staff shoes, the flowers suddenly looked ridiculous. 3 years of marriage ended among dirty champagne glasses and half-eaten desserts. I was packing the audit documents when he approached. Sienna. I stopped. He looked older than he had an hour before. I'm sorry. I closed the case. I know. No, you don't. He swallowed. You swallowed. I need you to know I looked for you. 4 months. He flinched. You know, Arthur told me. I thought. He rubbed his forehead. Your mother showed me messages. Forged. I know that now. Chloe told you trauma changed her memory. Yes. My parents said I'd had dissociative episodes. Yes. And you believed them. His eyes filled. I wanted to. That answer was more honest than any excuse. Why? Because the other possibility was, he looked at the empty room, that I had married someone I didn't know. I nodded. You chose the explanation that hurt less, and it cost me. He closed his eyes. Yes, for years I'd imagined Julian seeing me again and immediately understanding everything, then begging, then me destroying him with one sentence. Real life was quieter. He had been deceived. Deeply. He had also failed to recognize that the woman he married could no longer discuss the work that had defined half our relationship. He accepted every explanation because challenging them would have forced him into a frightening truth. I could forgive the confusion. I could not rebuild a marriage on top of it. He whispered, Can we? I knew the question before he finished. No. His jaw tightened. You don't even know what I'm asking. Yes, I do. I loved you. I loved you too. The past tense hurt both of us. He looked at the floor. I still don't. He stopped. I stepped closer. You didn't cause what they did. He looked up. But you weren't able to see me when my face was standing right in front of you and everything else was gone. His mouth trembled. I was stupid. No. I shook my head. You were human and frightened and easy to manipulate because the lie lets you keep your life. He swallowed. That doesn't sound better. It isn't supposed to. Silence. Then he asked, will you ever forgive me? I thought about the basement, the 4-month search. The altered woman he had convinced himself was still me. Maybe someday forgiveness would become possible. But forgiveness and return were different things. I don't know. He nodded. It was more than I owed him. The criminal cases took 14 months. Once one person started cooperating, the family story unraveled quickly. Investigators produced the clinic records, the basement evidence, the financial trail, and messages between Chloe and my mother discussing what she needed to memorize about Julian. Then they found a text from my father sent a week before the wedding. Once she is in place, Mercer funds solve everything. That sentence destroyed their defense. The identity swap had been financial planning, kidnapping as a balance sheet strategy. Chloe eventually pleaded guilty to identity theft, conspiracy, fraud, and related financial crimes. My parents faced kidnapping, unlawful confinement, conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering charges tied to the money they had routed onward. Their sentences were long. I attended only one day of court. My mother turned before she was taken away. For a second, she looked like she expected me to comfort her. Old habits, old roles. I didn't move. Chloe received a substantial prison sentence as well. Not because she was my twin, not because she stole a husband. You don't go to federal prison for being cruel. She went because she stole an identity, helped imprison another person, and moved millions of dollars through fraudulent transactions. The distinction mattered to me. I didn't want a fairy tale punishment. I wanted reality. Mercer Dynamics survived. Barely. The merger was delayed, restructured, and eventually completed after the board removed several executives who had ignored control failures. Julian lost a large amount of equity. His reputation suffered. For once, I didn't enjoy that either. He had spent 3 years living with a crime committed against both of us, even if he hadn't understood it. We spoke twice during the legal proceedings, both times about evidence, nothing else. A year later, he sent me a letter. Not email, paper. I almost threw it away. Instead, I read it. He did not ask me back. That mattered. He wrote, I spent years believing love meant trusting the person in front of you. I understand now that trust without attention can become another kind of blindness. I don't expect forgiveness. I only wanted to tell you that I finally understand why you said I didn't recognize your soul. You were right. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and went to work. Bellamy Klein offered me managing partnership 6 months later. Arthur pretended it was a difficult decision. It wasn't. You're becoming tolerable, he said, so you're promoting me. I need you too busy to bother me. I signed. My new office overlooked the river. No one gave it to me because I survived. They gave it to me because I was good. That difference meant everything. The merger payout and legal settlements made me wealthy, not Julian wealthy. I didn't care. I bought a small home outside Amsterdam with large windows and almost no basement. Hestant, that part was deliberate. My bedroom door never locked automatically. Also deliberate. I kept one photograph from childhood. Chloe and me are 9 years old, same haircut, same missing front tooth, arms around each other. On the 4th anniversary of the wedding that wasn't mine, Arthur invited me to dinner. He raised a glass. To survival. I shook my head. No. He frowned. Too dramatic. Too small. I lifted my own glass. The competence. Arthur laughed. That may be the most Sienna toast imaginable. I looked out at the city. My right hand still hurt sometimes. I still hated chamomile tea. Ballrooms made my chest tighten. And once in a while, when I saw my reflection unexpectedly in dark glass, I thought for half a second that Chloe was standing behind me. Then I remembered. A face can be copied, a signature can be forged, a dress can be stolen, a name can be used by someone else. Even love can be manipulated. But there were things Chloe could never steal. The nights I studied when nobody praised me. The work I did when nobody was watching. The choices I made after I climbed through that basement window. The mind Julian had fallen in love with, the judgment my parents had spent years calling cold, the discipline they resented because it couldn't be bought. They tried to erase me and discovered something too late. Identity is not the face people recognize, it is the pattern of choices. Only you can make. Chloe stole my wedding. My parents stole 3 years. They nearly stole my life. But the woman who crawled out into that freezing rain wasn't empty. She carried the one asset none of them had ever understood: herself. And this time, I knew exactly what she was worth.